Hey everyone, welcome to Heroic Nonsense episode 17. Today we'll be checking out the evil Autobot Shattered Glass Rodimus from the Transformers Generations 2-pack with Sideswipe and his Decepticon sidekick Whisper. First things first, while he may be called Shattered Glass Rodimus, I think Shattered Glass Hot Rod fits much better since he's the alternate universe version of Studio Series Hot Rod. I guess his goatee and mustache give him a more Nemesis Prime or Rodimus Unicronus feel, but for the purposes of this review, let's just stick with Rodimus. And before we jump into the review, here's a new fun little game for you guys. So we've got this great bonus accessory Blaster, which came with Masterpiece Loud Pedal, and I believe is based off of Blaster's original Diaclone colors, which I use for different displays. It matches up nicely with the current SG Blaster, as you can see here, so I've placed them in a bunch of photos throughout this episode, so try to see if you can find them all. High level, I love this figure. It's, in my opinion, masterpiece level with no gaps in any part of the mold, and I always like the shattered glass concept. I'm one of those collectors who likes to have multiple colors of the same mold, but in different characters, so shattered glass is right up my alley. We'll look into the details in a bit, but overall, very nice paint job and color scheme with the main body being a shiny black coat with silver and purple highlights. My favorite combination for Decepticons, or in this case, evil Autobots. You even get the fingers to have some individual motion, and those nice big fins look great on his back. If you're a fan of the original mold, this is definitely for you. Let's start with a still of SG Rodimus so we can all take a moment to appreciate how cool he looks. It's nice that they added a bit of red highlights, especially when you add on his disc that replaces his hand. Again, great dark colors with some silver thrown in that really makes his figure stand out. He's also very posable, which we'll see in a bit soon. A close-up of his face reveals all these nice details, including some red eyes, a very cool silver paint job that reflects the shadows nicely, and of course that menacing goatee that distinguishes this evil Autobot from his good guy counterpart. Like the original Hot Rod mold, he comes with a drop-down visor, which is hidden in his helmet, and is also red, which allows for some cool uses, especially if you want to display him on a motorcycle. As for accessories, he comes with the same spinning sawdust that Hot Rod comes with, but this time in red, and also makes for some very cool poses. And another great accessory, a corrupted matrix of leadership with red energy emitting from its center, a nice counterbalance to the original matrix of leadership in both the movie and the Studio Series Hot Rod figure. And finally, his last group of accessories, two blasters which come with some nice laser effects, again in red. You can also see how posable he is here, especially at the hips and knees, which can result in some really fun poses and display ideas like this one here, and some more we'll see down the road. Let's jump right back in with his Hot Rod mode. As most of you already familiar with the Studio Series Hot Rod know, this is a very sleek car and I find captures the movie version really nicely. Switching up the colors like they've done here for SG Rodimus just knocks this guy right out of the park for me. Sleek, black, Cybertronian Hot Rod is definitely a must for a Transformers collection, and you've got these beautiful red highlights for the lights which give this figure a bit of a nice color. So taking a bit closer of a look at the hot rod mode, we see a better view of the detailing, which particularly stands out on those red headlights. I also love the red windshield and find that the red really does fit the general black, purple, and silver aesthetic perfectly. You of course get the nice silver motor sticking out like the original G1 toy had, and an updated version of the flames in purple with a nice sized Autobot symbol also in purple, which we'll compare to the Studio Series Hot Rod shortly. Top view, you can see some more of these very nice details of the figure. Even where the joints are in a different color to meet the needs of the robot mode, it fits right into the look of the vehicle. That fin is also really distinguishing, and I'm glad they made it nice and big. Cool dark mags for the wheels and silver piping for the exhaust rounds out the overall look of the hot rod mode. Any which way you look at this figure, it is sleek. We'll start this section off with a look at the whole Shattered Glass Autobot team that I currently have, which includes in addition to Rodimus, SG Ratchet, SG Optimus, and SG Blaster with his cassette. You can see how nicely they all scale next to each other. As for vehicle modes, the vehicles also scale great in my opinion, and I really do like how well the colors of these evil Autobots complement each other. Adding in purple Autobot symbols just makes it all the more awesome. Here we have our whole Shattered Glass collection to date, rounding out the collection with SG Sideswipe and Whisper, SG Soundwave with his cassettes, SG Starscream, and of course SG Megatron. The same way I love the darker purple and black color scheme for the Autobots, I think the lighter and white tones for the heroic Decepticons with their red Decepticon symbols look incredible. Again, they all scale great both in bot modes as well as vehicle modes. You can really scale these vehicles well together other than the cassette players because of some of the characters' Cybertronian modes. This way, it's a bit more realistic having a smaller Tetrajet and Cybertronian tank next to some more traditional sized Earth vehicles. While the original Studio Series hot rod looks great, I find the finish on the SG Rodimus to be much more premium. You can see what I'm talking about by comparing the fins, as well as Rodimus's silver paint and black finish versus Hot Rod's finish. A few minor differences are in the chest plate flames, with Rodimus's being much sharper and more elaborate, and including a bigger Autobot symbol. Rodimus also has the mean looking goatee and of course a darker color scheme, but otherwise these figures are exactly the same. I'm going to show you a bunch of different shots of the hot rod modes here, but other than the colors and the hood detailing, again, these vehicles are exactly the same. In this case, I think they both look amazing, but which do you guys prefer? I wish they made a true shattered glass version of Rodimus because I think it would be out of this world, but for the sake of comparison, here's what Earthrise Rodimus Prime and SG Rodimus look like together. I actually think they look really cool next to each other, light versus dark. Something about these two next to each other really stands out, likely because both molds are complete wins for me. Placing the two hot rods and Rodimus next to each other also makes for a nice little vehicle mode display. Now this is a fun little comparison for me. The Power of the Prime's Rodimus Unicronus next to the SG Generations Rodimus. This line is actually what got me back into collecting Transformers right before we had our boys, so these Power of the Prime figures hold a special place in my heart. Although technically not the same character, they definitely have the same aesthetic, and it's fun to see how far things have come since then. While a great concept at the time, things have come a long way since the Power of the Primes line, but interesting to see how well these figures look next to each other, especially when comparing the Hot Rod part of the Power of the Primes figure to the new SG Rodimus. Because they're technically different characters, no reason why you can't create some cool displays or storylines for these two. I think the figures look the best next to each other versus the Hot Rod modes, because I think the Power of the Prime's Hot Rod is a bit too big. However, when compared to the Hot Rod truck version of Rodimus, they actually line up quite nicely next to each other. This is where I think the two could really complement each other well, story-wise or display-wise. Since I love the newest Motormaster from this line, and they're both mean bots, these two do make a nice pairing and line up really well scale-wise. They also generally share the same color scheme, which makes them look perfect together. I also really like the idea of SG Autobots mixing in with this universe's Decepticons. Comparing SG Rodimus to some other Decepticon cars, I think they also line up really well. Here I use Earthrise Runabout and Legacy Wild Rider because, as I think you guys are figuring out, I like displaying figures with similar color schemes if possible, especially if not part of an established team. I won't spend much time here, but I wanted you guys to see the box art quickly. It follows the same style and box shape as the other two packs, and I generally like these unique pieces. I also like when the designers go all in on the back design, which I think they did here, and is why I feel it stands out a bit more than the other packs. Okay, so let's transform this guy into his vehicle mode by lifting up his arms first, and then swiveling the hips about 180 degrees, and then we'll open up the legs about 45 degrees like so. Next, we'll open up the bottom portion of the leg like this, and then unfold the wheel and exhaust portion. And then we're going to push in the foot. You'll want to fold in the leg like this at this point, and then turn it around, and on the back, just close everything up. It all clicks into place. And then you'll do the exact same thing for the other leg. I'll just note here that before flipping up the leg, you'll want to just push it in like that. Okay, now that we have the legs all folded up, you can just push them back a bit like this. And then we're going to push back the fin section and open up the front chest so that we can pull out this hood section like so. Next, you'll want to open up the hood and then flip it up 90 degrees so you can spin it around like this. Make sure the arms are facing upwards. I think it's easiest that way. And then you can take this head, turn it around so it doesn't show through the windshield later, and push it back. Then just close up the hood, flip it around, and you're going to turn this fin section 180 degrees like so. And you can just push it down for now. Next, bring these arms forward. I like to bring it in this direction. And then we'll just pull that tab down a bit. You got to open up the arms with this little tab and then flip the whole exhaust portion 180 degrees. And then you can use that tab to cover the hand. So you do the same thing here, open the tab, flip it back 180 degrees, and you'll cover the hand as well. And now everything's going to click back here in place, like this. Takes a little bit of doing. And then just click in the front to the back exhaust. They'll click in. Make sure everything's in place, tighten it all up. And then you gotta open up these two headlight portions of the front of the car, and then close up the hood. And there you have it. Shattered glass Rodimus ready to roll out. Okay, let's wrap up this episode with some display ideas, starting with my favorite of SG Rodimus, hanging out with Wild Rider up against Motormaster, listening to some metal tunes and shooting the breeze. Of course, the most obvious display is of the Shattered Glass Autobot team heading into battle together. Like I said earlier, I love the way the colors generally match up with each other, so you get a very striking display. I always preferred the Decepticons slightly to the Autobots, but these guys may make me a convert to the Autobot side after all. And since these are not the heroic Autobots we're used to, here's a display of Rodimus betraying Optimus and stealing his matrix of leadership to take the power for himself with the help of his comrades. Getting the whole crew into a shot together for this episode wasn't easy, but here they are. Light versus darkness. Also makes for a really striking display idea. And because we're using some Cybertronian versions of the Decepticons, we can put them all together in this shot and have them scale as well. Again, I left out the cassette players, well, maybe only one. As I alluded to earlier, having some Decepticon cards in a display with SG Rodimus is also a cool idea. I even like using him with Velocitron G2 Dragstrip, with both being very unique designs, both in black, but Dragstrip having gold highlights to contrast Rodimus' silver one. Threw this one in as a bonus because I try to use Barricade whenever I can, just because I love the idea of a Decepticon police car, and I think these two do look good together as well. Wrapping this all up, Rodimus taking a stroll with Wild Rider, listening to some tunes on SG Blaster. A little R&R to unwind before the next battle with the heroic Decepticons. And finally, my favorite pairing, SG Rodimus with Earthrise Thundercracker. These guys just look like they go together, real brothers in arms. You can even throw in G2 Ramjet to round out the team. And then add in SG Optimus to lead them all into battle. One more shot of SG Rodimus on Masterpiece Black Rodimus Convoy, because this is just a really fun one to do. This is one of those pairings that would obviously be off scale with both in vehicle mode, but they do make for an interesting display, at least for this episode. And just because, let's end it all with a bit of Inception using SG Blaster and Masterpiece Frenzy. You have a boombox that has a cassette that can transform into a robot who can then hold the boombox. Very trippy. So that brings us to the end of episode 17 of Heroic Nonsense. Hope you enjoyed this alternate universe review and are ready for some new reviews shortly. I've pre-ordered a bunch of the next Transformers figures from all the upcoming lines, so I will make sure to review those as soon as they're in my hands. In the meantime, I have some fun ideas for a few upcoming reviews, as well as releasing part 2 of my Transformers G.I. Joe crossover Soundwave review, so keep an eye out for those. If you've liked what you've seen here, please subscribe and help us grow this channel, and would love to hear your comments below as well. Until next time, remember, it's all such heroic nonsense in the end.
Bravo!